Hello, Judge, and hello, my opponent. My stance in this debate is that prison should not be abolished. I'm well aware that our prison system is not perfect, but prison is necessary, and it can be fixed through reforms. Specifically, reforms like increased education for prisoners to help them become positive additions to society upon their release. I will also prove that prison is a crime deterrent, and it prevents criminals like rapists and murderers that can cause detrimental harms to society from being out on the streets. But first, I must address the ideas of my opponent. Thank you very much for your very detailed opening speech. You laid out the definition for what prison is in this debate, saying a prison is a building where people are kept as punishment for a crime or while they are waiting to go to court, followed by three alternatives to prisons that you believe should be put in place of prisons once prison is abolished. But before I go further, I would like to point out that in this debate, fiat is present. So if the judge does vote for the proposition, these things must actually happen. With that being said, let's take a look at my opponent's alternatives to prison. His first alternative is that all nonviolent criminals be sent to the military. The idea sounds good in theory, but could never actually happen in reality. Firstly, my opponent seems to have forgotten about the thousands of juvenile prisoners who are under the age of 18 who cannot be sent to the military and may have committed nonviolent crimes. He may have also forgotten that some 95,000 non-citizen prisoners who are not eligible to join the military. In addition, the military has strict educational restrictions. To enter the military, you must have a minimum of a high school diploma or GED. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 68% of inmates never receive the high school diploma, and after they have the diploma, they must be able to pass an armed services vocational aptitude test with arithmetic reasoning, mathematical knowledge, word knowledge, and paragraph comprehension. And with a majority of inmates not having a GED nor a high school diploma, I don't see how it is possible that they will be able to pass. Therefore, you cannot just send all the non-violent criminals to the military. There is no fiat in this way. My opponent also cites a 1960 study that shows that going to the military lowers recidivism, but that study must be taken with a grain of salt because the participants in the study had already served their prison sentences and the military was a form of parole, not a prison alternative. And of course, the recidivism rate would be low. Look at the time of the study. It took place right in the middle of the Vietnam War, a war that was so hard fought that the country was drafting soldiers, so when they were sent to the military, they were more than likely fighting in the war, which isn't the environment where the possibility to commit crimes was present, and therefore that evidence cannot be fully trusted. My opponent's second alternative was that there should be mental institutions for the mentally different. I do not oppose that. In fact, there is a system of mental health institutions already in place, so I would not address this issue. Finally, my opponent proposes public services for the violent criminals. He also already defined a prison as a building where people are kept as punishment for a crime. Then he also adds that criminals will be held in boarding houses. These boarding houses will be considered a building that is controlled by the government and thus constitute a prison. I'm sure he will argue that it isn't because it is not a punishment but a rehabilitator. But the fact of the matter is that it is a punishment. The same Webster's dictionary that he uses to define prison defines punishment as A, suffering pain or loss that serves as retribution, or B, a penalty inflicted on an offender through judicial procedure. The boarding houses and services represent loss of rights as retribution and serve the penalty that is given by judicial procedure, satisfying both parts. And the last I will say about these alternatives is, what will you do with the possibly dangerous people that are arrested, that are waiting to go to court? Will you let them go free into society, send them to the military, send them to mental institutions? Now that those points are addressed, my argument is that reforms are what prisons need to be better. In 1990, literature shows that prisoners who attended educational programs while they were incarcerated are less likely to return to prison following their release. Studies in several states have indicated that recidivism rates had declined when their inmates received appropriate education. In Oklahoma, inmates that received education had only a 25% recidivism rate compared to a 77% recidivism rate for those that were uneducated. Furthermore, the right kind of educational program leads to less violence by inmates involved in programs and promote a positive prison environment. We should have educational programs for academics as well as social skills, artistic abilities, and teaching techniques for managing emotions. Prison also solves for harms of having mass murderers and serial rapists from walking free in society, preying on little children. Prison keeps these criminals locked away and unable to harm society. Prison also is clearly served as a deterrent in the United States, which is evident by the U.S. historic progress in reducing crime and incarceration rates. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, and the Attorney General Holder, in the past 5 years between 2009 and 2014, both the overall crime rate and the overall incarceration rates fell by around 10%, something that hasn't happened in over 40 years. Therefore, with reforms, prison can be beneficial to society, and the alternatives my opponent proposes are not feasible.